So, if you've been online or watching the news at all lately, you have probably seen the headlines. India is running out of gas. Restaurants are closing down. Menus are getting shorter. But what is really going on? Let's break it down right here and separate the facts from the fiction.
All right, let's just get right to it amid all the chatter and the worrying headlines. Is India actually truly running out of cooking gas? Okay, this slide cuts right through all the noise. That big claim that India has completely run out of gas? Totally false. And the fear that your gas at home is going to be cut off? Also false. The truth is, while restaurants are definitely 100% facing a shortage, this is a very specific problem. It is not a nationwide crisis for your kitchen. And to get even more specific, this isn't hitting everyone the same way. The real squeeze is being felt almost exclusively by commercial kitchens. So, think restaurants, hotels, those big food chains. And it's mainly happening in major cities like Mumbai, Bengaluru, and Chennai. And the impact on those businesses, it is huge. This number, 20%, that's the share of hotels in some of the hardest hit areas that have literally been forced to shut down their kitchens. Why? Simply because they can't get their hands on the commercial gas cylinders they need to operate. And this chart really just shows you how bad things have gotten for them. In some areas, the supply of commercial cylinders has dropped by a whopping 75%. I mean, can you imagine trying to run a restaurant when you're only getting a quarter of the fuel you need? It's a massive, massive challenge. So the big question is, why? Why is this all happening right now? Well, it's not just one thing. It's more like a perfect storm of three key factors all hitting at once. So it really boils down to these three things. First, there's conflict in the Middle East that's messing with energy supply routes. Second, India relies heavily on importing its gas. And third, the government is making a very strategic decision to make sure you, the household consumer, come first. Let's break each of those down. First up, the geopolitics. A huge chunk of the world's liquefied petroleum gas, or LPG, has to travel through this very narrow strip of water called the Strait of Hormuz. And with the ongoing conflict in West Asia, sending ships through this choke point has become way riskier and more expensive. That causes immediate delays for countries like India that are waiting on those shipments. And that leads us right into the second reason, India's own vulnerability. As you can see from this chart, the country imports nearly 60% of all its LPG, and most of that comes from the Middle East. So think about it this way. For every 10 gas cylinders we use in the country, almost 6 of them come from somewhere else. So when that global supply chain gets a little shaky, we feel it right away. And that brings us to the third piece of the puzzle, a very deliberate choice by the government. To stop any kind of widespread panic, the authorities are redirecting the available gas supply to make sure that homes, that's you and me, get what they need. The unfortunate side effect, of course, is that commercial users, like all those restaurants, are the ones who end up facing the cuts. Okay, so with all this going on, what is the government actually doing to manage things? Let's take a look at the official response. They're really attacking this from 3 different angles. First, domestic refiners are pushing to produce more LPG themselves. Second, as we just talked about, they're officially redirecting gas to where it's needed most, which is households. And finally, and this is really critical, they're keeping a very close eye on distributors to stop anyone from hoarding or creating a black market, which could make a tough situation a whole lot worse. All right, so that's where we stand right now. But what about the future? What happens next? Well, honestly, it pretty much all depends on how that conflict in the Middle East plays out. And that leaves us with 3 possible scenarios. In the best case scenario, the conflict over there stabilizes, supply chains get back on track, and this whole shortage problem pretty much disappears in maybe 2 to 4 weeks. Now, the more likely case, the conflict kind of simmers on, we continue to see pressure on the gas supply, and that probably means higher food prices for us. And then there's the worst case scenario. A major disruption at the Strait of Hormuz, which would cause some really severe import shortages. Now, before you get too worried about that worst-case scenario, it is really important to point out that experts think that while it's possible, it is, for now, considered unlikely. Okay, so let's bring this all back home. We've established your kitchen gas is safe, but how is all of this actually going to affect your daily life? Well, the most direct way you're going to feel this is in your wallet when you go out to eat. If this shortage keeps up, restaurants are facing higher fuel costs, and they'll eventually have to pass that on. So you could start seeing a 10 to 30% hike on your final bill. And beyond just higher prices, you might start noticing a few other things. Your favorite restaurant might have to temporarily take some gas-heavy items like tandoori dishes or dosas right off the menu. You might also start to see more kitchens making the switch to induction cooktops or other electric methods to try and cope. So let's just say it one more time, loud and clear, because it's the most important takeaway from all of this. The disruption is on the commercial side. Your supply of cooking gas at home is being protected and is not expected to be affected. So the bottom line is this, plain and simple. This is a very real, very serious problem for restaurants in the food industry, but it is not a crisis for your home kitchen. And this entire situation is really a stark reminder of just how much we depend on these sometimes fragile global supply chains. It leaves us with a much bigger question to think about. As the world gets more and more unpredictable, just how secure are the daily essentials we all take for granted? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.